Hey everyone and welcome back. It's Gina from orchidandopal.com, and today we're going to be working on the Sunflower Bliss pendant necklace. You can see that here and the materials below, which I will have detailed and listed out underneath this video in the description section. All of the beads for this necklace come from the Sunflower Bliss collection that I put together with Eureka Crystal beads. And that link will be right down below as well if you want to try to get your hands on one of those, or the products you can of course pick up individually in all sorts of different colors on their website. As you can see below though, we'll be using some size 11.0 and 15.0 seed beads, the 2-hole checkmates triangles, the 2-hole bar beads, 3x2mm crystal rondelles, 4mm pearls, and you'll want one of the 2-hole Czech glass sunflower beads that will adorn the center of the necklace. As far as beading thread goes today, I'll be using my usual 0.006 inch diameter 6-pound Fireline, and I'll be stringing a comfortable length of that onto a size 11 beading needle. And since the amount of thread you might want to use changes from person to person depending on what you're comfortable with, I won't be showing the process of adding more thread in this video, mainly because if you're tackling this sort of a project, you're probably already familiar with adding in additional thread at this point. What we're going to do first is work on the main or focal piece of the pendant. We're going to create sort of a bezel that's going to go around that central focal bead, and that will go in last. There is a look at the back of the necklace just to give you a picture of what that looks like close up before we get started. And then after that, if you'd like, you can watch how I string on these beaded areas right here to lead into the actual necklace. You're welcome to make that the entire length of your necklace chain if you'd like, or you can finish it off with other types of beads or any other material you'd like. This is just one example of how you could finish up this project. So at this point, if you're going to be making one of these along with me, you can go ahead and thread your beading needle with a comfortable length of thread, gather up your materials, and we will jump into this tutorial. Alright, so first let's pick up an alternating pattern of 6 of the bar beads and 6 11.0 seed beads. Just alternate those on the needle. And you're welcome to use a stop bead if you'd like to. I'm just so used to not using one, but that is totally up to you. Once you have that group of beads on your needle, you can pull those down and leave yourself about a 6-inch tail thread, just like that. Now you can take your needle, which I have mine coming out of this end. I'm going to swing back around. I'm going to go through all those beads again. We're going to form those into a circle, which is going to become the bottom of our pendant. So I went through all those beads. I'm going to go through one more. And I'm going to hold on to the tail thread and the working thread since I'm not using a stop bead. And instead of tying a knot next to this bead to secure my thread, I'm actually going to go through all those beads again, I think. So I'm going to go through a few and then pull and go through a few more. And those last two, including that next bar bead, and that should be good enough to hold that thread in place for the moment until we're ready to weave that back in. So I have these beads laid out in this manner with the bars fanned out so that the open holes are sticking out on the outside of the loop. And at this time we can actually step up. We can go up through that open hole of the bar bead that we're currently coming out of which will get us on that next row of things to add some more beads in between those existing bar beads. So in between each of these sections, I'm going to pick up an 11-0, a bar, and an 11-0. And then I'll sew through the open hole of the next bar bead, holding those with my thumb and my forefinger and pulling that thread tight. Taking a minute just to lay that out again, straighten it up. And you're going to do that all the way around. So pick up an 11-0, a bar, and an 11-0. Then sew through the next bar bead. And you'll continue to do that 4 more times. So with this last group, I'm going to go through that next bar bead, and I'll go ahead and proceed through the next seed bead and the next bar bead that's already in place, pulling this all nice and tight. At this point, you should have something resembling this right here. And I'm going to go ahead and put a needle on my tail thread and weave this back in and around and then trim off the excess just to get it out of the way of the tutorial. So I'll do that right now and be right back. All right, that's better. And now once again, we're gonna step up and go through the open hole of the same bar bead, just like that. And we're gonna insert one of our triangles, a pearl, and a triangle in between each of those bar bead sections. So we're gonna start by picking up one of those triangles through the right-hand hole, just like this, and go ahead and pull that down, and then pick up a pearl and another one of those triangles in the same manner. So going through that same hole and pull that down just like that. And then you can sew through the next bar bead going through the open hole. So the key here is just to make sure you're going through the same hole of those triangles each and every time. And you can possibly lay them out the same way. That can make it easier to see what it is you're doing. And then once you have those beads inserted all the way around, you can just double check and look at all those triangles and make sure they're lined up the exact same way throughout the whole piece. And now we're reaching our last bar bead. So I'm going to go ahead and go through that same hole and proceed through the next triangle, pearl, triangle, and start to pull these beads a little bit tighter. Before we move on to the next step, I also would recommend going through all those beads in that round one more time just to reinforce the section. So just go through a few beads at a time. Take your time, make sure you don't miss any, and it's also a good time to check and make sure that those triangle beads are all laid out with their holes going in the same direction. Once you get a little bit past that starting point and you're coming out of one of the triangles, I'm going to flip that to its side so we can see those holes better. I'm going to go down through the open hole of the same triangle bead that I'm coming out of. This is one that's sitting right below a bar bead if I'm holding it in this direction. And again, just pull tight and you should have something that looks like this. Now we can start filling in these areas in between the triangle beads. And when you're coming out of one that is right before one of those pearls, you can pick up 3 of your bar beads and then sew through that next triangle bead going through the open hole. And just go ahead and pull those and they will swing around a little bit right now, but we're going to secure them on the inside of the piece once we have those in place. And then in that next section, with the triangles framing a bar bead, you can pick up 111 and then sew through the next triangle. And repeat this process all the way around. So 3 more bar beads through the next triangle and an 11 through the next. And I think you have the idea. So just keep going. And once you have all those in place, we can meet back and move on to the next step. All right, and with my last 11 ready to sew in, I'm going to go through that triangle bead and just go through the rest of those beads around that ring and reinforce that section as well. I think that's a good idea to do at this point. So I'm just going through all those beads once again, a few at a time, and pulling this thread so that this row has a good amount of structure and strength to it. Once you arrive back at the beginning, you can stop at a point after you've gone through 3 of the bar beads, which is where you can then step up and sew through those same 3 beads, but go through the open hole. And we're going to start turning those groups of 3 inward towards the center of the necklace. Now I've brought in some of the crystal rondelles. And we're going to insert one of those in between each of the 3 bar bead sections. So I picked one up and then I'm going to sew through the next 3 beads and pull and repeat this all the way around, picking up another bead, sewing through the next 3 and continue on. You can see those are just starting to gather together a little bit more. And we don't have to tighten these up too much just yet because we want to be able to fit that sunflower inside of the center. And picking up that last crystal and going through the next beads. And I think again, I will sew around that group of beads again to strengthen this area, going through a few and then pulling tight. And this is what our component looks like at this point. With this open area in the center, you can just try to start flattening those beads down a little bit. But we have a couple more steps to do around the top. Just going to sew through a few more beads and then we'll get to a point where we can do another turn around. So I'm coming out of those 3 bars. And now I'm going to sew through the same 3 bar beads, but go through those other holes. It's putting me on the outer ring of our component. And I'm going to go ahead and sew through that next triangle bead, that one only, and then turning this on its side again so you can hopefully see it a little bit better. I'm going to go through that other hole of the same triangle bead. It's going right underneath where the 3 bar beads are. And this is where you can start pulling out some of your 15-0 seed beads. I want to mention that the ones I used for this project initially are from the 15-0 Miyuki seed bead mix. And I actually picked out a certain color that I wanted to use. It was a silver lined orange color. You're welcome to use any color you want. You can even use the mixture of different colors if you'd like. So that's up to you. So I'm just going to pour some of these out. And I think I'll use some of these opaque ones because I used a lot of those silver lined orange already. So pick up 3 of your 15-0s and then a crystal. And we're actually going to be attaching this or tacking it down a little bit to the central bar bead in each of those sections. So I'm going to actually sew back through the bar that's in the center, going through that outer hole. And then I'm going to sew back through that crystal once again. Then I'll pick up 3 more 15-0s and sew through the bottom hole of the next triangle bead and pull tight. You can also sew through the next bar bead and get to your next triangle, which is where you'll start doing that all over again, and just repeat that around the whole piece. So again, I'm going to get 3 15-0s, a crystal, and then I'm going to sew back through the center bar. Also sew back through the crystal now and pick up 3 more 15-0s. And then sew down through the next triangle, bar, and triangle, and pull tight. So keep adding those sections in all the way around the piece, and I'll meet you back in just a moment. With all the 15-0s in place now, we can take those a step further. And what I like to do is just go through the first 3 15-0s, just like that. Skip over the crystal and sew down through the next 3 15-0s. And try to get that string or thread to go underneath that crystal as you pull it. And what that'll do is it will turn those beads into more of a triangle with a peak and that crystal being at the top. So it just cleans that up a little bit. And we'll follow our thread path sewing through the next triangle, bar, and triangle. And just repeat that over again all the way around the piece. So I went up those first 3 15-0s, skipping the crystal, going down through the next 3, and then pulling those tight as I go. All right, so there is the back of the piece again. It looks a little bit better now. And I'm currently coming out of this crystal right here. I'm going to turn the other direction, go through the bar bead next to that as well as the next one. And then I'm going to sew down through the 3 bar beads, the same ones, to get into this position right here, which is where we can start to add our sunflower coin. And you can see this bead has 2 holes, and it also has a back without the sunflower design. With where I'm coming out right there, I'm going to go down through the hole that is on the right, and I have the front of the flower facing me. It's going to sit in the center of this component, and we're going to attach it to those 3 bar beads that are on the opposite side. So I'm going through the 3 down there, pulling this tight. And now I'm going to go through the open hole of the sunflower coin down that way. Again, pull nice and tight. And then I'm going to proceed through those same original 3 bar beads where we started tacking this down. And then you can just reinforce that section again, going through the sunflower and then around those same beads, just like that. And then when you get to those 3 bars at the top, I'm going to also proceed through that next crystal and pulling this tight. I'm going to actually sew around that entire central section once again to make sure the tension on the center is even and continues to be reinforced. But as you can see, I am really low on my thread right now, so I'm going to add more in, and then I'm going to go around and reinforce that section. And then once that's done, I'm going to meet you back with a new piece of thread, and I'm going to exit out of one of these crystals at the top of a bar section. That's where I'm going to show you how to add those little beaded segments on to begin the beaded chain that connects to this pendant. So reinforce that as much as you'd like. Make sure there's no gaps in between those bar beads, especially the ones that surround and look like flower petals. And just use your fingers to tighten that up and place everything evenly as you go. At that point, you're welcome to use this component as it is right now. Otherwise, I'll meet you back in just a moment. All right, we're getting closer to the finish line. And as I am coming out of this crystal off to the left-hand side, I'm going to start working on the left portion of that little beaded chain. And what I'm going to do now is pick up one of the bar beads that's going to sit on the side of the crystal. Next, we can grab an 11-0, a 15-0, and an 11-0, and then sew through the open hole of that same bar bead, and those seed beads will sit on the side. And I went ahead and pulled that tight toward the crystal. Here you can pick up 2 more bar beads, and that one in the center is going to sit up like that, whereas the third one is going to sit off to the other side of the crystal. And we're going to add in those 3 seed beads, the 11-0, 15, and 11-0, just like we have on the other side, so they're symmetrical. And we'll sew through the other hole of the bar bead and back through the crystal again. Back through all those beads to reinforce this section. Holding that with my thumb and my forefinger to pull those tight around the crystal, but you can see that's what we have started, and that will be the base for one side of our little chain. So I'm just going around all those again to tighten that up. I want that area to be secure. And then back up through the seed beads. This time through the 2 bar beads, coming out of the one that's in the center. And I'm going to step up through the open hole of the one in the center and pull tight. We'll also use some of our crystals at this stage. I'm going to pick up one of those and then sew back down through the same bar bead. Just wedge your needle underneath a little bit and wiggle that through. Just take your time. And then pick up another crystal and sew through the hole on the top of that bar bead again. Pull this tight. Make sure those crystals are positioned on either side just like that. And then you can extend your chain by picking up another bar and sew through the original bar once again. And those are going to sit kind of stacked on top of each other just like this. And we'll add some extra seed beads in those areas. I'm going to pick up another 11-0, a 15-0, and an 11-0. And we're just going to go around that same thread path that we just went around, going through the new bar bead, picking up an 11-0 and a 15-0, an 11-0, and then sewing back through the original bar bead again, making those sides match, pull tight, then sew up through the 3 seed beads on the left and proceed through the bottom hole of the bar bead. Again, pulling this nice and tight. Now you're just going to repeat this same process all the way up as long as you want this chain, and you can make that the entire length of your necklace if you want to. We'll do another one together. So I'm picking up a crystal and sewing through the top or open hole of the bar, picking up the next crystal for the other side and sewing through the bottom. Now I'll sew back up through the crystal, this time on the right, pull tight, and sew through the top hole again. Pull tight once again. So that's what we have so far. Let's add on our next bar, going through the top hole of the one before it, making sure those are tightly stacked on top of each other. And then pick up your 11-0, the 15-0, and your next 11-0. And we'll sew through the bar. Get another round of seed beads. And then through the bar once again, pulling tight and sewing up through those 3 seed beads and through the bar bead. So just repeat that process, and I went until I had about 9 of the bar beads stacked on top of each other in the center. And I ended that with a horizontal one and a wire guard. I'll show you how to do that. Just keep going and make the length of your chain as long as you'd like. We'll meet back and finish up our piece. All right, so I've got one of those sides almost done, and I'm coming out of the top hole of this bar, and I'm going to pick up an 11-0 and a bar bead using a little tiny bit of thread left. So I'm hoping to make it before I run out and have to add a whole new thread for this little tiny section. And here we'll go around one of the wire guards, just string that down. And you're going to go down through the other side of the wire guard as well as the open hole of the bar. Hold that with your thumb and forefinger so the thread settles into the groove of that guard. And then pick up 111.0. And at that point, you can sew back through that top bar bead in that vertical position and just sew around that section again a couple of times, after which you can weave in your working thread, make a couple of half hitch knots, and the side of that piece is complete. I'm going to add in a new little piece of thread to the other side, which I'm going to attach to the crystal that is to the right of the one that we just worked on to make the other side of the chain. And at that point, we'll meet back and we can admire our work. And here's our component all finished with the other side of that chain complete and all of our threads woven in and these wire guards ready to go and in place for a connection to this necklace in a variety of different ways. So I want to thank you all so much for joining me today. I always love having you. Don't forget you can look down below for the full list of materials to make this particular pendant necklace. And you can also find the Sunflower Bliss collection at Eureka Crystal Beads while supplies last, as well as the other products needed to make these in the colors you see here, but also a number of others as well. That's going to do it for this time. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and I'd love to hear about it if you gave this a try, so feel free to leave a comment down below. Also, give the video a big thumbs up and share the tutorial with your other beading friends. And I'd love for you to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, because I will be back with a couple more Sunflower Bliss tutorials before the month is out. Hopefully I'll see you all back then, and until next time, I hope you have a fabulous rest of your day, and as always, happy beading!